Should I wait for you to let me know when to start?
Yeah. Hey everyone that's joined us already. We'll start shortly in a couple of minutes. In the meantime, feel free to drop your name, the organization you're from, or business, and where you're dialing in from. We'll be streaming this event live on Facebook through the UNDP Europe and Central Asia account, so feel free to share it once you, yes, as we start. Thanks. So welcome again to everyone that's joined us now, and to everyone that's watching us live on Facebook. I'm Svetla Bayeva. I'm the comms lead with the innovation team at UNDP Europe and Central Asia. And this is the 4th edition of Boost Talks, our webinar series. It's part of Boost. It's a UNDP-led initiative that we launched last year in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And at the core of it is the use of social innovation to tackle COVID-19 and development challenges in Europe and Central Asia and the region. And together with both civil society organizations and businesses and academia and research institutes. So we've developed an intensive online training and a mentorship program. And over the past couple of months, Boost has really evolved into a platform to run all sorts of challenges. And we're really looking to expand and evolve this platform as the needs arise and as we go forward. And Boost has been really made possible thanks to our wonderful partners at Startup Grind, the world's largest community of startups, founders, innovators, as well as our partners, Koch Holding, the Slovak Ministry of Finance, and the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And today we're really happy to have with us Michał Kramarz. He's head of Google for startups in Central and Eastern Europe. He's been in the internet industry since 2004. And joined Google in 2006. And in the last years, he's been supporting Polish startups in their global expansion. Today's session of Boost Talks is going to explore how the acceleration of creating a digital tech-driven economy could be kind of the key to post-pandemic growth, and how Google is leading this digital path, particularly in the region. So without too much more talk, I'd like to give the word to Michał, after which we'll continue with the discussion and Q&A. So as he's presenting, feel free to drop your questions in the chat box so we can bring them up afterwards when we have time at the end. So over to you, Michał.
So hello, great pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I don't need to introduce myself because already have been introduced. So let me start straight away from the presentation. I will tell about a couple of words about several topics. So one thing is why Google is supporting startups, and why do we focus on supporting the ecosystem. I will also talk a bit about what are we doing in terms of globally, but also in terms of more local. Then a couple of words about Central Eastern Europe and what we observe in terms of how Central Europe is changing, and especially in terms of startup ecosystem and digital development. Nextly, some of the impacts of the COVID that we've observed, and at the end, some of the initiatives that Google for Startups is doing, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe. So starting from the point of view of why Google is supporting startups, I think it's kind of obvious. We used to be a startup. Entrepreneurship is in our DNA. We've developed a lot of products and worked with a lot of startups, and basically we believe that we are able to support startups in many fields. So what we focus on? We focus on connecting startups with right people, products, and best practices. People both on Google side, but also external, through partners, through mentors, through experts. Products, meaning most of the solutions that Google offers, not only in terms of advertising business or analytical business, but technology, cloud, and everything that can help startups support, and which is scalable in terms of fast growth. And best practices, there's a lot of elements we focus here. We have a pretty big experience in terms of growing as a fast growing as a company. Therefore, we are keen on sharing these elements as well. So first of all, let's start a bit from a global reach. We have a wide network of partners globally. Of course, most of this was, based around the physical locations of our own and our partners. Now in the COVID times, we switched to digital, but the network exists, and we work closely with partners to deliver the best content, best programs, initiatives that we can support startups with. So the global network is around 75 partners. We run around 10 accelerators. It's varying year by year. We used to run them in physical spaces. Now, again, due to COVID, we run the acceleration programs purely online. We hope when the pandemic goes down that probably it's going to be mostly in the hybrid model. We can talk in the Q&A on the benefits and disadvantages of the online model and of the offline world. But we see a lot of positives and negatives of purely digital solutions. And we also run 7 our own physical spaces, campuses. One of them, and the closest in Central Eastern Europe, is campus in Warsaw, which is a hub for our operations. But there's also campuses in London, Tel Aviv, Seoul, Madrid, Sao Paulo, and Tokyo. So if we set for the mission that Google for Startups puts in front of ourselves, it's leveling the playing field for startup founders and communities to succeed and connecting them to the best of Google. What does it mean, leveling the playing field? It's basically supporting startups from various ecosystems with various elements. In some of the ecosystems, this will be mainly diversity. In some of the ecosystems, it will be mainly connecting with founders when there's too low investment in terms of the ecosystem. In other, it will be connecting with the technology. It will vary country by country, and it will vary by the region we operate. But basically, we try to connect founders so that they can succeed. And we believe that if founders succeed, if startups succeed, we all do, and Google benefits as well here. So in terms of the global offering for startups, what are we doing is basically we're using three main elements: technology, best practices, and people. In terms of technology, as I was saying, this is focused around most of the Google products, and not only using the products, but also support in terms of getting the best out of these products. In terms of best practices, we're talking about supporting on OKRs, so objectives and key results, KPI setting, how to really structure the progress of the company, how to measure the growth of the business, how to really build up the best in class solution to see how the organization is developing. And meeting the right people is exactly the network, not only of Googlers, but also of our friends, partners, experts, mentors, and everybody you can actually think of in terms of how we can support the business growth. So if I'm talking about what we're offering to startups, we can divide it into three main stages, like start, build, and grow. You can treat it as start as a startup, build as a startup, and grow as a startup, or basically start with getting to know Google, building with Google, and growing with Google solutions. If we go on the start stage, basically we created startup at google.com, where basically you can start from self-learning, and you can basically see all the elements I was talking about previously. If you're really willing to to spend some time learning on your own, getting to know the best practices, getting to know the stories of founders, getting to know how to use the tools and solutions that Google offers. But also we created a couple of months ago a startup school, which basically learns a lot of elements that you can basically sign up, and in 2 hours get the professional training from our partners in terms of how to get your website found on Google search, how to create your cloud, how to create cloud solutions, how to advertise on YouTube, and basically all the elements that can be useful in terms of getting to know Google products and solutions and making the best use of them. This is an introductory courses, so basically this is aimed at people that either have a basic knowledge or simply have some knowledge but want to have the solid background in continuing to more advanced courses and more advanced learnings. And of course, meeting the right people, as said, like physical spaces of Google, the campuses, were a place where basically, hundreds of people came every day. In Warsaw only, we had 100,000 people visiting throughout 5 years. Unfortunately, for a year we are under lockdown, but I hope that after the summertime again we will be able to come back. So already feel invited to the closest campus in the region, but also to all the campuses that we have. Like when you become a member of one campus, you're becoming a member of all the campuses. You're becoming a member of Google for Startups networks. So basically, the entrance to all the physical spaces is available to our members. And as said, this is the interior of the physical space. It kind of looks this now, but usually there's a ton of people in the campuses and a lot of events and initiatives that we or our partners are doing. So for the build stage, we are leading several high-touch programs, as we call it. So basically the programs that focus around a smaller group of startups, specifically devoted to a specific topics, industries, or sustainability development goals, or other elements of developing of the companies and of developing of the economy. These are usually the programs that have cohorts of 10, 15, 20 people or 20 startups. And we basically spent several months together working on a specific topic. One of the example of the high touch programs is the accelerators we're having. Here you can see, for example, the data from our last year's Accelerator Poland, which was focused on the startups in Central Eastern Europe. We focused around gaming and basically had 10 companies starting from Belarus, finishing at Serbia, where basically all the companies not only experienced how to actually make their games better or how to develop, user acquisition, but also mentorship and leadership know-how in terms of getting simply better as founders, but getting simply better as businesses and growing their businesses. On top of it, there are immersion programs where we not so much focus on the specific topics or verticals, but actually on challenges that founders have. We ran immersion women founders from our Berlin hub, where basically women-led startups were able to share the challenges and were able to solve together the challenging elements that they encounter. Same story happened driven from UK on the Black Founders immersion, where basically founders were solving together the same challenges that they encounter, although they are from different businesses. And here we focus a lot more on people itself and on the founders rather than on the business so much. If we go to the growth stage, basically it's simply scaling. Here you can see an example of growth academies that we're doing across Europe and globally. Here's an example from Growth Academy run together with local office in Ukraine and Belarus, where basically we supported startups in terms of using analytics, using ads business to scale the company, but also supported them on general development of on this specific stage on how to utilize again the best practices we are able to share. Now coming to more closer topics, so Central and Eastern Europe. As you know, CE is a diverse region. We have around 200 million plus population. We have 150 million internet users. We are a very tech-driven region. Like developer population from our region is around 1.5 million. Each year there are around 400 engineering graduates. But what more important, there are 25 languages in the region, which makes it a very complex region with a group of smaller and bigger countries. And on a map it looks like a one spot, but if you take a look at the reality at the ecosystems in the region, they are very varied, very complex, and on different stages of the development. But the good positive thing with the ecosystem is that it's rapidly growing. We have 12 unicorns coming from CE with a combined value of 30 billion euros. There are around 30,000 startups in our region. What is super important is that the venture capital investment during the last 5 years, I mean from 2015 to 2019, almost multiplied by 5. So from $300 million in 2015 to almost $2 billion into now 2019. And from the numbers we're seeing from 2020, it looks like we overpassed already the 2 billion investment. So this is a huge growth. Just to see the bigger countries below, you can see that of course we're far away from Western Europe or United Kingdom in terms of the absolute value. But if you look at the pace of growth, we are really speeding up here. And I wanted to tell you a bit more also about the concept of digital challengers. That is, in 2017, McKinsey introduced a concept of digital challengers for our region, not the whole Central Eastern Europe, but 10 countries from CE, starting from Baltic states, finishing at Bulgaria, where basically the digital was aimed to be the growth driver for our countries from the region. And If you compare it to the so-called digital leaders at the north, the most developed digital economies, and the big five on the left, meaning UK, Germany, France, you can see that the complexity of the region is huge. Like you have you have 5 countries with 324 million people in big five, with 65 million on average population, and you have 10 countries with 100 million population in digital challengers, which is basically a totally different story. But if you take a look at the GDP per capita growth, digital challengers are growing at a rate of 100% during the last 15 years, versus digital leaders and big five below 60%, which means that the GDP is on a fast growth track. And again, in 2017, McKinsey prepared kind of a scenario for digital challengers in terms of, okay, how the digital economy can speed up our growth, and how the aspirational scenario can make the digital economy almost double within the 10 years from 2016 to 2025. Unfortunately, until 2019, we weren't going at the aspirational scenario. We were going definitely at the base scenario, or a bit above the base scenario. So the digital economy in digital challengers grew by 7.8% versus digital leaders, for example, by 8+%, which means that the digital leaders were growing even faster than the challengers. But what happened was that in 2020, as we all know, COVID came. And I love this screen because this is a screen from one of our programs when Punita Gavral, one of our mentors, was simply stating that crises are most often overmanaged and at the same under-led. And what happened actually, especially in the Central Eastern Europe, is that digitization simply speeded up. It speeded up across the world, but in our region very much. Year-on-year growth of the digital economy between COVID was on 7.8%, as I was saying in CE. In the January-May 2020 versus 2019, it almost doubled. For example, in Poland, it almost tripled. It from 7.5% to almost 18%. This shows that we have a huge potential in terms of digital economy. What else is, as Google for Startups, we asked several of our startups, how did the COVID-19 impact their businesses? And I must say that Central Eastern Europe Google for Startups community is very specific, because we have a big portion of startups that, for example, are working on gaming, and I will talk about it later. But basically, we saw that when we asked startups, they said that the COVID situation impacted their business positive with 38%, didn't impact with 20%, and 42 were impacted negatively. If you take a look at very positive and very negative, these are numbers around 15% both ways. So we might say that at least at this group, this wasn't a huge research, because it was 100 startups that we discussed. But within this group, basically we see that it wasn't a huge impact either way. It was somewhere in the middle, but also positive and negative. So this also shows the diversity of the startups, and specific verticals being very resilient, specific verticals earning, I would say, or getting benefits of the current situation in digital development, and some, of course, with the more, I would say, traditional approach to business, or more traditional verticals losing on the situation. So what are the initiatives that we're actually currently doing in terms of Central Eastern Europe? So in 2020, we actually turned 5 as Google for Startups in the region. We opened the campus in 2015, 2020. We were celebrating 5 years. Funny enough, we had to celebrate 5 years digitally, so we couldn't invite our startups to campus. But we decided that, okay, we are not able to invite startups to campus. We are not able to celebrate together. But let's do a report showcasing how the ecosystem has changed during the 5 years. And I highly encourage you to go to the link that you have at the bottom of the page on the campus website. where you can basically download the report and show how much ecosystem has changed throughout this 5 years. We did 3 elements. One element is showcasing our startups and showcasing how really they changed during that time. Second thing is showing how the ecosystem changed, and third thing is actually how Warsaw changed itself, because the campus was built on the right-hand side of the Vistula River, which was hugely underdeveloped in the previous years. Since that time, there's a lot of changes that happen in Warsaw and a lot of changes that happen on the place that physical space is operating. And we said, okay, we want to see actually how this also changed. And the information we got from the surveys was very surprising, showcasing that, for example, campus became the third most important investment recognized by citizens on the right-hand side of the Vistula River, after the National Stadium in Poland and the second underground line. So we were super happy to see these numbers. But I really encourage you to take a look at the report. There's, I think, over 100 pages of interesting content, startup stories, and a lot of data that you can really benefit from, talking about not only Poland, but also Central Eastern Europe. We also are focusing on showcasing Central Eastern Europe worldwide. This is one of the examples from our global Google keyword blog post, where basically we were showing why it's important to watch startups from Central Eastern Europe. And like for many of us, it's obvious that we have amazing tech talent in the region, but also the investments, as I said, are growing. There's more and more development happening in terms of the ecosystem itself. There's more and more support network, I would call it this way, where basically startups on various stages can find support not only from Google, but for many organizations across Central Eastern Europe. And it's very important from our point of view to also showcase Central Eastern Europe outside of the region and bring more investors from outside the world. From around the world, bring more interest to the region, and hopefully get the ecosystem even bigger and even faster developing than it is now. Other things, we recently started a pre-acceleration, which is a partner program with Huge Think, one of the pre-accelerators in Poland. This is the registration is actually open now. So if you're on an early stage and you're having an MVP, this is the time to actually apply. Again, at the bottom of the page there is a link that you can find information more about the program. This is a partnership that we're testing. If it develops, we are also thinking about doing more pre-accelerations in different parts of Central Eastern Europe. The good thing here is that the program is fully online. So basically, regardless of the place you are based, you can apply and learn together with founders from different countries. And this is actually one of the huge benefits of online, that you, without moving from home, you can learn from founders from across the world and participate in initiatives that usually would be tough to participate if there was a need to travel. Another program and initiative that we're doing, and it's actually running now, is Business Model Mastering, which is a course both for B2B and B2C startups. When we are supporting startups in actually, getting their business model to the right place. Again, we're seeing startups from different countries here, from Serbia to Greece, Turkey, or Latvia, and basically the biggest value here is that you not only learn from experts on how to set up the business model or how to set up pricing, for example, but also from each other, like having the same challenges, having best practices, learning from each other is a huge value. This program is already running, but we are planning next waves in the second part of the year. And again, it's focused around 10-15 startups that basically can build up the business model together. The next element, I was already talking a bit about Accelerator. This is an example of the Accelerator we recently finished a couple of months ago. This was the Google for Startup Accelerator Europe, but we had a huge representation of startups from our region. We had 6 startups from CE out of 9 startups in total. So this was a huge representation from Central Eastern Europe. And the next accelerator that we hope to be launching at the second part of the year, we will be actually focused a lot on the current challenges, because the main aim is to create an accelerator focused around edutech and health tech. So very, I would say, accurate topics to every one of us now, especially in time of online learning, in time of digital health and development. We see a lot of companies and a lot of startups from our region really doing a lot in this field, and we see a huge potential of these two segments. That's why we want to support them with the acceleration program, which basically combines the best of technology with international experts. Like one of the examples on the previous accelerator, we had among other speakers like Adam Cheyer, who was a co-founder of Siri, but also masterminds in terms of AI, and basically all of the startups very much appreciated having the possibility to for an hour to chat with people who really founded unicorns or global companies, and get to first-hand knowledge on the development of their products. And again, coming back to the Growth Academy I was previously talking about, this is also a program that we're now getting registration for. This Growth Academy for Central Eastern Europe is focused for 4 countries, so Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. We are planning the next wave also in the second part of the year. It's a 9 weeks, 4 modules program that applications started, application process started on the 25th of March, and it's until 14th of April. So if you're thinking about scaling the business, about making it big, having already the MVP, this is the kind of the offering that could be very useful. And last but not least, I cannot forget about gaming. We see a huge potential in gaming in our region, game development. And we started 2 years ago an initiative called Game Camps. They were physically run in our physical space in Warsaw, but since again COVID started, we switched to Game Camp webinars. And on each of the webinars, we are having around 300-400 participants, where basically not only us, but experts from the gaming industry and companies having successes in gaming industry are sharing their best knowledge and best experiences in terms of not only how to scale the business, but how to work on UI, UX, how to measure the users, how to basically build up games. And this is one of the, I would say, most successful initiatives we've run during the last couple of years in terms of Central Eastern Europe. And once the COVID pandemic finishes, we plan to come back to more hybrid model with again physical meetings, but also continue the webinars that we simply see bring a lot of value. The closest one is on the 8th of April, and it's going to be focused around creative works. It's of course for gaming, but basically, if you're interested about creative side of apps and games, this might be the very interesting thing to attend. All the events are free of charge. It's only registration, so that's basically the biggest advantage. And last but not least, simply, I encourage you to get involved and connect with us. One of the easiest and simplest way is basically to become a member. Go to campus.co/Warsaw because, as I said, this is the closest Google Campus, and become a member. This creates a situation that you will be notified on what is happening with our programs, initiatives, but also participate in our surveys, help us understand better the ecosystem, help us learn from you, and basically build up the better offer and better programs for everyone, and for making sure that Google CE startup ecosystem grows and that Google can support and participate here. So that's most of the things I've prepared. So let's go to Q&As.
Thank you, Michał, for the lovely presentation and really giving us a deep dive into the different programs that Google's offering for startups across the region. So we already have a lot of questions that are streaming in, but as we're kind of gathering them, I'd maybe like to kick off the discussion with a general question about the digital economy in the field overall. What kind of trends you're seeing at the moment, and particularly in relation to the pandemic over the last year? What's really changing in this area, and where's the growth coming from?
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was such a meme that had one question: who did the digital transformation in your company? And there were three answers. And one answer was CEO, the other answer was CTO, and the last one was COVID. And that's basically what we're observing. Like the current situation in the pandemic made a huge speed in digital transformation. And one of the sectors that we're observing had been mostly impacted is actually public sector. So basically, public sector has hugely jumped in terms of need for digital tools in terms of usage. We are also observing from the point of view of cloud how many companies and organizations are speeding up the transformation into cloud services. And basically, the trends, as mentioned, edutech is growing hugely. Health tech is a massive. Of course, one of the industries with the biggest impact is travel industry, where basically due to lockdowns, due to challenges with traveling, there's a lot of challenges for the industries. If you observe the reports on the losses of the travel industry, there are huge. And the expectations are that it's not going to recover within the next 1 to 3 years, but to come back to the situation that was in 2019, probably it will take around 4 to 5 years to really come back. So I think there are no industries that haven't been impacted. Some of them have been impacted positively, some of them have been impacted negatively. In general, the GDP globally has been impacted hugely.
Thanks, Michał. There's a couple of questions that came in with regard to some of the programs. So the first question here is from Rostin Dimov. He's asking, for all these programs and pre-accelerators, does Google take any shares from the startup? Is there any chance of getting paired with a company and the Alphabet company to work together to validate a solution?
Yeah, so the first part of the question is the easiest to answer. No, we don't take any stake in the companies. So regardless if it's Accelerator, if it's Growth Academy, if it's Startup School, it's equity free. So we don't get any stake in the company. In terms of the second part of the question, I would say this way: there are several investment vehicles at Google. So there's Gradient Ventures, there's Google Ventures, there are a couple of other parts of the company that focus a lot on investing into startups. And usually it works this way that if you're having a great solution and you're developing it and you're engaging in the program that, for example, Google for Startups is doing, and you're gaining scale, then this parts of the company are getting interested into talking. Yeah, so usually to have a solution that the investment part is getting interested, it's usually connected with getting a scale and getting the numbers that basically help to showcase how the company and how the solution is capable of developing. So I think that the easiest and fastest way to get in connection with I would say investment part is basically to build a scalable product and to gain traction on this product and to show what's the global potential, and then trust me, there is a way to basically go into the field of the interest. There are not many investment actually in Europe from Google itself in terms of startups, but there's a lot of interest in terms of the startups in our region, and I think that more and more examples will appear. Yeah. One of the recent is maybe not recent, but one of the examples, for example, Fitbit, which is now joining Google. And actually, I had a presentation yesterday when we were basically welcoming Fitbitters to Google, and because they will be also partially working from Warsaw office. So there is a good chance to to become visible, and I think one of the most obvious elements is to gain scale and traction.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. There's several country-specific questions. For example, does Google have any plans to work in Central Asian countries? Potential with, for example, working with local accelerators. Has that been explored, or is that in any way kind of in the pipeline?
I must say I'm a lot more focused on CE than other markets. But definitely, we have a wide partner network. We have, in terms of in general Asian market, we have our operations in Korea and Japan. That would be, I would say, the closest Asian locations. So there's not many of them, but our partners operate in many countries, and basically, you don't have to be in a specific market to join the initiatives that we're doing more global. So even as I was saying, with the Accelerator Europe, we had startups from Israel, for example, joining. So it's not the case that if the initiative is done specifically for one region, it's only for one region. Like, we try to have similar offerings in different parts of the world, so that the offering is more straightforward.
Thanks. We have a really good question from Jenny about public-private partnerships and innovation. Do you have any kind of success stories that you could share of how Google engages these type of partnerships and innovation? Because most generally, when we talk about innovation, people usually refer to private innovation. And now UNDP, as well as governments, are also in need to explore different innovative paths, but not necessarily alone. And it would be good to get various insights on how to engage public-private partnerships in innovation.
Yeah, I think that, like, one of the example is actually in 2 weeks from now, we are opening a cloud region in Warsaw, which is basically Google Cloud data centers and a lot of around it. And there's a publicly/privately partner, which is OCHK. So it's an operator of national cloud in Poland. And basically, we're one of the key partners with OCHK, where basically we hope that this offering towards companies in the region will make a big change in terms of the digitization. So this is kind of the elements we're definitely engaging into. And having a cloud region in Central Eastern Europe, in Poland, does a lot of positive elements towards creation of the jobs, creation of faster development of the companies, but also on digitization of the economy. So there's a lot of positive elements that we expect to happen here. Again, I'm not an expert in cloud, but this is, I think, one of the elements we're most proud of. And we even launched a couple of months ago, and now launching specifically for our region, cloud certification programs, where basically people can get trained to become professional cloud architects, engineers. And doing it digital, it supports also jobs creation. It supports basically reskilling of people and enabling them to start work in a totally different place than they used to work.
Okay. I have a question that's related, that kind of employs the UNDP perspective. How do you think the current startup ecosystem in the region is contributing to solving some of kind of the pressing issues at the moment, also related to development issues? For example, it would be great if you could share maybe a story from Google's own initiatives that either are tackling something with regard to COVID or other issues around urban transformation or climate change. do you see any of the startups kind of addressing these issues that are coming out of your programs?
Yeah, I would say that at least from our region, the most startup actually from our Accelerator Europe, they addressed basically the topic of health. Yeah, and the topic of health and actually also two of them address the topic of education. I know it's maybe not directly sustainability, but it is a very needed element in nowadays. And that's why we, for example, we are now working, we are supporting a report in terms of health tech from our region, which we expect to see in coming weeks, where basically we want to see how much of the potential we want to show actually how much of the potential there is in health tech in the region, and how we can support better this development. I know that there are different initiatives also happening in terms of sustainability itself. We used to have a sustainability accelerator before the COVID. I think now this one has been postponed a bit, as far as I know, but it's not the case that there's not happening anymore. Yeah, so there's a lot of elements that we try to work with startups. We basically try to support startups directly so that they can address the challenges. Yeah? Because we believe that who other than the founders know actually what they want to do, what they want to change, and our role is basically to provide the support for them to make this change.
We have a question from one of the attendees regarding whether state edtech projects can get and receive mentoring.
Yeah, I mean, the case with mentors is basically that we have mentors from all across the world, but also from very different industries, and basically becoming a member of Google for Startups community connects with getting to know what initiatives are happening and getting to know what kind of mentorship programs and initiatives we're doing. We're not so much focusing now on in this field in the region, but it doesn't mean that you cannot get a mentor if you reach out to us, and there is a mentor of this specializing in this field in our ecosystem. We are actually also working on I would say external tool available to startups that hopefully will allow access to mentors directly, meaning like kind of a matchmaking tool. The development is progressing. It's not progressing as fast as we would expect to, but hopefully that mentoring is one of the elements that, apart from being in a program where basically mentoring is kind of granted, we will also be able to provide more mentoring towards the community in general. It was a lot easier, again in the physical spaces when basically mentors were present, and it was simply possible to touch base in a physical space and discuss some topics during the mentoring hours or mentoring events. Now it's a bit more complicated, but hopefully this is also going to happen.
We actually have several questions that are related to possible collaborations and partnerships with Google. For example, we have one that's, would Google be interested in co-organizing, supporting AI for social good challenges, like regional, together with UNDP, or in general provide various like training and mentorship for the public sector in innovation with regard to GovTech and so forth. What do you think about such larger scheme partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, we probably need to take the discussion offline,
yes,
and talk about specific cases. But in general, we're committed to supporting development of the region, and we're committed to supporting development of the initiatives that not only target specific industries, but also specific like the social ecosystem. And as said, would need to learn a bit more about the details to be 100% able to respond.
Well, I'm sure for those who wrote to us, who wrote in the chat box, in the QA box, we can take this conversation further offline. So thank you for asking Draško and Jenny in the QA. And we have one other question, which is a bit different. So are there certain areas that Google investment vehicles are interested and focused on? So what's for example, the approximate investment size that early stage startups can expect from those VCs?
This will vary very much, on the investment vehicle that is talking with a startup, and it will vary case by case. It's like, I wouldn't like to give a certain number because it's a very case specific. Like, for example, Gradient Venture is definitely a fund focused around AI and high tech. Yeah, so this the investment will be different than for example Google Ventures. So it's not a specific brackets that you can give, and it's not a specific industry that you can also give. It varies a lot by product solution potential. Varies a lot by the development stage of the product, by the team. It's again same as in the investment market. Like there are funds specializing in a specific stages. There are funds specializing in a specific fields. We try to look at the startups holistically, and the teams that are doing the investments are looking for the solutions that can actually address specific topics. And it will vary a lot.
Thanks. I have one question which is related again a little bit more generally to the startup ecosystem in general in Central and Eastern Europe. What do you think is currently missing in the area, and what developments do you expect in the, for example, near future or post-pandemic even?
Yeah, I'd say that one of the elements actually that we should see more of, and it's luckily gradually developing, is thinking global on side of the founders. I would say that this is one of the 5 elements actually we pointed out in the article I was talking about at the Google blog post, that there are already great examples of founders thinking globally and going international relatively fast. But I think there is also this element of many startups still thinking that going international means going around the closest neighbors, which is sometimes challenging. Of course, it's totally different if you're developing a startup in the United States where you have 300 million people as potential customers and English language is all around the world. But if you develop a startup, I don't know, in Poland or Czech Republic or Romania, your closest market is relatively small comparing to becoming a unicorn and going really big. So one of the elements that is really important is to start thinking, okay, how my product can be global from the very beginning, or how I can set in the mindset that I want to be global and what step needs to happen. And the other thing other element I think is very important is the diversity. Talking about diversity, I'm talking about gender diversity, which is one element, but also in general, nationalities diversity, for example. Yeah, like we recently became a partner with Accelerator Fund and Uncapped Ventures on the report showcasing that women-led startups, how they are receiving funding in our region, and basically how small actually chunk of the money is going to women-led or co-funded startups, and it's just around 5%, meaning 95% of the money is going to to startups led purely by men in our region. And this is one of the challenges, because if you have diverse team, you have diverse perspective, and you create more diverse product, which means you create product for more people. And I think these are the elements that we really need to work on. And probably last thing is a bit more private money into the ecosystem. So we have great example of public money being engaged into developing of the ecosystem. This is obvious, and this is great results. But we should see more and more private money coming into the ecosystem, and more international money, which should even further boost the ecosystem. More and more venture capital funds from Western Europe, from US, and for example from Israel are getting interested in our region and are investing in our region. So this is also on a good path.
Thank you very much, Michał. I think we have no more questions, either in the chat box and the Q&A box. If there are any last questions, our attendees can drop them in the QA or the chat box. Otherwise, I think we'll even be able to wrap up on time. We have one question with regard to how Google addresses IP and data access issues with the startups it supports.
I would say that actually we are preparing, and I think in Germany already launched, and in CE soon to launch data privacy and security trainings for startups with so-called GSEC team, so Google Security and Engineering team. And I think that they should be soon available, and I think it's very worth to take part in this, because basically you can learn how to actually make sure that data privacy and security is there for your startup, for your customers, and basically for yourself.
Okay. There's a second part to this question, which is, do you claim ownership on IP after receiving funding or resources? But as I think you have no since you don't even take shares of the startups, I'm not sure this is a relevant question.
Yeah, I think in terms of Google for Startups initiatives, we, as said, we don't take equity, and we basically do it as more CSR initiative. So basically nothing in terms of claiming IPs here. And in terms of Google investments into startups, this is case by case, and I'm not the best expert to answer in terms of the investment side.
Thanks. And we have one last really good question, so I'm going to put it forward. Because we mentioned the barriers to women receiving funding, what do you think are the biggest barriers right now to receiving access to funding, equity funding, VC?
I would say usually challenges lies on both sides, and I would say that one element in terms of investors, vast majority of investors are men, and you tend to often look for people that are similar to you, which means the investment on this side is often a bit skewed towards own perception. But the good things that are happening is that more and more women are becoming investors or are joining the investment funds, which is I think the good element. And the second thing, that's actually one of the statements one of our friends from the VC market said, that like founders, especially men, tend to be a bit overconfident, and women founders tend to be underconfident, which is like not true in terms of their businesses, and not true in terms of what they are doing, but in terms of simply self-confidence. So I would say that we need to act now. That's why we engaged, for example, into the report, and we wanted to showcase this. And basically, I think that more and more investment happening into diverse startups will only make the products, startups, and the ecosystem better. And I think that this is the only way to do it. So instead of thinking what to do, it's simply to act and A, showcase it, B, support women-led startups. We are actually having a metrics on our internal programs that we want to have a certain number of women-led startups, or basically co-founded startups, which are way higher than the numbers on the ecosystem.
Yeah, well, even with regard to that, there's an interesting fact that, especially in the last 10 years with the multiplication of various crowdfunding platforms, a lot of women and women-led businesses have turned to crowdfunding because of the lack of access to traditional funding, and have been hugely successful. Actually, women-led businesses are able to raise more funds by crowdfunding than other businesses that are led by men. So there's this interesting comparison.
Yeah, but even in the report, and I can encourage you to take a look at the report. It's called funding. Sorry, it's called Funding in C, as far as I remember. Look for Experior Venture Fund or Uncapped Ventures. I encourage you to take a look, because basically there are information in the report about ROI, for example, on investments from diverse startups, and it's better than men-only led, for example. Yeah, so this also showcases that basically the more diverse team you have, the better both product, company, and return on investment should be.
Thank you, Michał. Thank you so much for your time and the wonderful presentation and the insights and all the questions that you answered the last half hour. And thank you to everyone from our attendees that are still with us, and to everyone that's been watching us live. So tune in to our next Boost Talks later this month.
Thank you for the invitation, and hope you'll join the Google for Startups network, and we can support you.
Okay, thank you, Michał.
Thank you.